What's going on everyone, Mike here, and in this video we're having side by side the Apple iPhone 5 and the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini, two of the best decent sized phones of the moment. The iPhone 5 is the much pricier device here, but is it actually so much better than the compact S4 version? Well, that you'll find out from this clip, so let's get going. The S4 Mini comes with a 4.3-inch screen, and because of that, I do find it a lot more comfortable to use than the premium Android devices of the moment with those 5-inch displays. That also makes it a closer match for the iPhone 5 in terms of size and how it generally feels in hand. The iPhone is still somewhat more compact, thinner, but I actually enjoyed using the Galaxy a bit more, perhaps because of those rounded edges, creepy back and overall wider form factor. Speaking about that though, this Samsung is a miniaturized replica of the Galaxy S4, which means that it comes with the same glossy plastic rear panel. It's removable and you can access the easily replaceable battery, the micro SIM and SD card slots underneath, but it still feels somewhat cheap. In fact, much like its larger kin, the S4 Mini lacks the premium charisma of the metal-built iPhone 5. It also doesn't feel as sturdy, but none of these handsets would survive drops and bumps, and both will scratch in time, so you should get some protection for them anyway. At least that's what I do, and in this case, the whole aluminum versus plastic debate becomes somewhat irrelevant. That's why the practical aspects matter more here. Both phones feature volume rockers and power buttons, but I do find the layout on the Galaxy more comfortable to use. The S4 also bundles a standard micro USB slot and an IR blaster, while the iPhone 5 has the Lightning port and the mute physical switch, which is actually quite useful. At the end of the day though, it's hard to choose one over the other based on externals alone. The iPhone 5 is the slicker and better looking of the two, but the S4 Mini ain't shabby either and bundles more useful features, while actually feeling somewhat better in hand. But let's go ahead and power on these two handsets. The S4 Mini is running Android 4.2.2, while the iPhone 5 is running iOS 6, soon to be upgraded to 7. I'm not going to get in depth here, we could talk about these operating systems for hours if you'd want to, but there's no time for that, so I'll keep it short. iOS is overall simpler and snappier than its rival when it comes to daily tasks. It's also backed up by a vast selection of apps and content stores, but at the same time it lacks plenty of useful features and feels old, and that's partially why iOS 7 will offer a completely revamped interface. Android on the other hand is much more tweakable, much more customizable and stuffed with all sorts of options. As an average user, you might not use all of them, but at least you're given the option to. On the other hand, the daily Android experience is overall not as smooth, not as seamless as on iOS. You'll still encounter stuttering from time to time, apps that crash and so on. However, the S4 Mini is a surprisingly snappy Android handset. Swiping through home screens, widgets and apps was a pleasure on this one, and I was able to run games, watch movies and even edit some photos and clips without encountering any annoying sluggishness. However, I did keep the number of installed apps and widgets to a mere minimum, which for sure helped. And this proves that raw power and number of cores doesn't matter as much on a phone. Both handsets here are motorized by dual-core processors and on paper and in benchmarks they fail to impress, but the everyday experience is almost flawless and that's what actually matters. Anyway, let's turn our attention on the screens for a little bit. As I mentioned in the beginning, the S4 Mini comes with a 4.3-inch display and QHD resolution. The iPhone 5 offers a smaller 4-inch screen and higher pixel density, that's why it is capable of displaying much sharper content than its rival. In practice though, you'll hardly ever notice a difference unless you're very closely looking at those screens. Besides that, both displays are vibrant and offer rich colors. These are punchier, oversaturated I might say, on the S4 Mini, and at the same time, the AMOLED panel on the Galaxy does offer deeper blacks and contrast. The iPhone's IPS panel, however, is brighter, that's actually usable in strong light, and displays more accurate whites and colors in general. Screens and daily experience aside, the camera performance is a do or die on a modern smartphone. Both the S4 Mini and the iPhone 5 offer 8-megapixel rear shooters, plus quite good 720p capable front-facing cameras for video calls. On the other hand, the S4 Mini does offer a way more complex camera interface, with filters, plenty of modes and manual tweaks to choose from. The interface is as basic as it can be on the iPhone, at least for the time being. iOS 7 is going to somewhat change that. However, when it comes to the overall image quality, the iPhone 5 outmatches the S4 Mini in pretty much every situation, but especially when it comes to poor light shots. See for yourself. Also, the iPhone takes smoother and sharper videos, at least in my humble opinion. What do you think? Alright, so based on the things we know so far, the S4 Mini is actually able to stand next to its rival in most cases, but loses points when it comes to cameras. It will win some back when looking at the connectivity options, for instance, as the S4 Mini does offer NFC and that IR blaster that you can use to remotely control your electronics around the house. The iPhone 5 lacks those, and also lacks an FM radio, which is something the Galaxy offers as well. And then there's the battery life. The S4 Mini comes with a larger 1900 mAh one, while on the iPhone there's a 1440 mAh battery. Both phones can go through the day with average use and can last 2 days or maybe more with very light and careful use. However, the Galaxy does have the replaceable battery, so you can buy a spare one and swap it if needed, something that will come in handy for a heavy user. Anyway, time to wrap this up. There are many other things I could say about the two, but I plan on covering the essentials and I'll stick with that. For more details, see my reviews for these handsets, also on the channel. Drawing the line on the comparison, the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini is surprisingly a tough match for the iPhone 5. Looks and build quality aside, it offers a nice screen, it's snappy and can last longer than the Apple handset on a charge. The iPhone 5 is still zippier in everyday use and superior as a camera phone, but the Galaxy does bundle overall more features. And that while selling for a lot less. Over here in Europe, the Mini is about 30 to 40% cheaper than the iPhone 5, and with contracts, the iPhone sells for twice the price of the Galaxy. In the end though, it's up to you to decide what to pick between the two. For me, as an iPhone user for several years now, the S4 Mini is one of the first Android handsets that I could consider, mainly because it's one of the very few properly sized for my needs. And because it doesn't have any major flaws, of course. Yes, Samsung could have fitted a 720p screen on the Mini, and yes, a better camera would have come in handy. And last but not least, Android is still sluggish when compared to iOS, but at the end of the day, I could probably live with those, and I'm pretty sure most of you could as well. So right now, the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini is definitely a handset to consider if you're not a big fan of large smartphones, as most of the premium ones are these days. The iPhone 5 still offers plenty and is overall a great phone, but for the money, the Mini feels somewhat like the wiser pick. And I expect it to get even cheaper in the following months. And with that in mind, it's time to end this video. Thanks for watching and don't forget to share it, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you liked it. And of course, if you're interested in more details about the Galaxy S4 Mini, check out my extended coverage on the channel. Alright, enough for now, I'll catch you later.